Okay, sir. Our house was next to Chandrabhan Taga's cattle shed. Families of Muslim weavers lived on the other side of it. Right in front of the cattle shed was a little pond that had created a sort of partition between the Chudas dwellings and the village. The pond was called Dabbowali, and it is hard to say how it got that name. Perhaps because its shape was that of a big pit. On one side of the pit were the high walls of the brick homes of the Tagas. At a right angle to these were the clay walls of the two or three homes of the Jhinwars, another untouchable caste. After these were more homes of the Tagas.
Yes, so Tagas actually in Hindi belt you call Tyagis, but in the dialect, in the local language, they become Tagas. Okay, this is one important thing. Second thing is the paragraph also tells about the how village and the uh, houses. So how a house is a house, but when 5 houses are arranged in a manner that reflect the caste structure. For example, where will the house of the low caste will be in a village? Will it be at the outskirt, marginal area, the area from after which you see the field start, or the or a low caste person can build a house in the center of the village. So, I mean, so what is it in the beginning? With what we notice is that the caste does not only enter the human mind, but it enters in the architecture, distribution of water, distribution of land, distribution of houses, settlement area, the basti, and so on and so forth. So ultimately, what we see in the first paragraph is the not a description of a location, but that location is defined by the caste society. Okay. Next paragraph. Yes, Sugandha, please read this.
The homes of the Chuhras were on the edge of the pond. All the women of the village, young girls, older women, even the newly married brides would sit in the open space behind these homes at the edge of the pond to take a shit. Not just under the cover of darkness, but even in daylight. The Parda observing Tagi women, their faces covered with their saris, shawls around their shoulders, found relief in the open air latrine. They sat on Dabowali's shore without worrying about the decency, exposing their private parts. At this same spot, they would have a conference at a round table to discuss all the quarrels of the village. The muck was the muck was strewn everywhere. The stench was so overpowering that one would choke within a minute. The pigs wandering in narrow lanes, naked children, dogs, dairy fights. This was the environment of my childhood. If the people who call the caste system an ideal social arrangement had to live in this environment for a day or two, they would change their mind. Our
Yes.
family.
Yeah, so this paragraph, you see, notice, as we know that this is non-hierarchical, non-canonical, and experiential writing, which comes from the experience, and the character or the narrator is telling not a story from imagination, rather how the society's own imagination of discrimination, and then you see the kind of resources. So the language, the character, the kind of words expressions, locations, they are seen from this perspective, from top down, not from bottom up, not from top down. So we will experience the paragraph after paragraph that the writer is writing from bottom up, not from top down. So that's the difference between the two writers. An upper caste writer, when writing on literature and caste, like Prem Chand, has a top-down approach, and Om Prakash Valmiki has a bottom-up approach. So the difference will be really of the experience. Somebody who suffered this is telling, somebody who wants a change in it or a modification in it or has a sympathy with it and is telling the story. Yes, Nandini, the next paragraph.
Sir, please wait.
Yes.
Our family lived in this Chuda Basti, 5 sons, 1 daughter, and our uncles, 2 chachas, 1 Tau and his family. Chachas and Tau lived separately. Everyone in the family did some work or other. Even then, we didn't manage to get 2 decent meals a day. We did all sorts of work for the Tagas, including cleaning their homes, agricultural work, and general labor. We would often have to work without pay. Nobody dared to refuse this unpaid work, for which we got neither money nor grain. Instead, we got sworn at and abused. They did not call us by our names. If a person was older than we were, then he would call us Oe Chude. If the person was younger than we were or of the same age, then he would use Abe Chude.
Right. So we see the how the caste structure develops a language within a language, and so elderly people or children of the upper caste and the elderly people and children of the lower caste, there will be, so discrimination exists in the resources of survival, whether water, food, etc. Then of shelter, whether house and other kinds of things. Then of communication, language. So in language also, the discrimination occurs. So ultimately, you see, these are all human beings, and if you bring up human beings in a discriminatory environment, then automatically you may turn some to be pessimistic or to be submissive or become subject, and others may acquire a psychology which is dominant and which is ruling a kind of, So these paragraphs, for example, right from the beginning, they actually tell these social, political, economic, and personal dimensions, as well as of the community, caste, and the way you see a village life is organized. So there may be different ideas about a village life in India. So somebody may be very romantic about it, a village, Indian village, where you can get good food, organic things, vegetables, and lassi and all that, and an idea of a farmer. But Ambedkar was very critical of the Indian village because he thought that Indian village is the microcosm of the caste society, and the caste relation within village are based on denial of human rights, they are atrocious, and they are torturous, and they dehumanize everything. So seeing a village from a Dalit perspective or from a low caste perspective reveals altogether a very different reality of the romanticized idea of Indian village. Yes, Sugandha, next.
Untouchability was so rampant that while it was considered all right to touch dogs and cats or cows and buffaloes, if one happened to touch a chura, one got contaminated or polluted. The chura were not seen as human. They were simply things for use. Their utility lasted until the work was done. Use them and then throw them away.
Right.
So what's the pronunciation for CHUHRA?
Generally, you see in Hindi belt, this word is used like chuda, chudeka, which means that he's from a sweeper family, and a lot of people even use this as a derogatory word for other people, and so maybe each one of us come from different dialect background, etc. But this word is quite common in North India among Hindi speaking people. Okay. And the Hindi word is chuda, which is now, I think, banned. Or another word is bhangi. Okay. So somewhere we have this synonym also of it. So, and that is a caste, and that caste is that caste takes care of the human excreta or animal excreta. Okay, in villages they do both the things. Okay, so I mean this story, and then he comes from that that background. Yes, next paragraph, Nandini. Yes, hello Nandini.
Yes, sir.
What's the next paragraph?
A Christian used to visit our neighborhood. His name was Sevak Ram Masihi. He would sit with the children of the churas around him. He used to teach us reading and writing. The government schools did not allow us to enroll. My family sent only me to Sevak Ram Masihi. My brothers were all working. There was no question of sending our sister to school. I learned my alphabet in Master Sevak Ram Masihi's open-air school, a school without mats or rooms. One day, Sevak Ram Masihi and my father had an argument. My father took me to the basic primary school. There my father begged Master Harful. Yes.
Okay. Harful Singh.
Yes, sir. Wait a minute.
Yeah, unmute yourself.
Master Harful Singh asked us to return the next day. I left from somewhere else.
No, this is the, I mean, before this, you have this page. Okay. So
Yes,
you
sir.
have completed this line till here.
Yes, sir.
And then after this, we have this page number 3, saying, Masterji, I will be forever in your debt if you teach this child of mine a letter or two.
Yes.
Yes, please continue. Yeah, this ends here, this paragraph. So what we see here, another character, and Masihi, that means this man who taught them alphabets was from their community, but perhaps he had become a Christian. That is why his surname contains the word Masihi. Masihi means Christian. Okay. And so what we see here, what we know here is that he used to teach us reading and writing. The government schools did not allow us to enroll. Now this is very important. My family sent only me to Sevak Ram Masihi. My brothers were all working. There was no question of sending our sister to school. And I learned my alphabet in Master Sevak Ram Masihi's open air school, a school without mats or rooms. One day Sevak Ram Masihi and my father had an argument, and my father took me to the basic primary school. Earlier, this primary school would not entertain the low caste children, but somehow he took me to, because there was an argument with Masihi, and then Master Harful Singh comes into picture. Yes, next paragraph, Sugandha.
Master Harful Singh asked us to return the next day. My father went. He kept going for several days. Finally, one day I was admitted to the school. The country had become independent 8 years earlier. Gandhiji's uplifting of the untouchables was having ramifications everywhere. Although the doors of the government schools had begun to open for untouchables, the mentality of the ordinary people had not changed much. I had to sit away from the others in the class, and even that wasn't enough. I was not allowed to sit on a chair or a bench. I had to sit on the bare floor. I was not allowed even to sit on the mat. Sometimes I would have to sit way behind everybody, right near the door. From there, the letters of the board seemed faded.
Right. So you see, we have this picture, whole you see idea of the modern India is in a way exposed when it comes to caste and school education, and generally we talk of the word reservation because that strikes most to many people, but in reality the internal structure, the internal relationship, the social relationships, and even in the school, how the children are treated and how they have to face this trauma for several years, all that doesn't come into the space, and that autobiographies actually speak that space. Otherwise, that material is not there in the record. And that's how you see literature and caste becomes a very important area, because invisible relations or which are not talked about, which have been suppressed in a way, hidden, okay, they come and become data. Social statistics can take care of them, and then there are other things, you know, about it. Next paragraph. Yes, Nandini.
The children of the Tyagis would tease me by calling me Chureka. Sometimes they would beat me for no reason. This was an absurd, tormented life that made me introverted and irritable. If I got thirsty in school, then I had to stand near the hand pump. The boys would beat me in any case, but the teachers also punished me. They tried all sorts of strategies so that I would run away from the school and take up the kind of work for which I was born. According to these perpetrators, my attempts to get schooling were not justifiable.
Yes. So you see how the struggle in the low caste child's life begin at this level. As soon as one accesses to the public education, then this conflict and stigma. So you see, this tried all sorts of strategies so that I would run away from the school and take up the kind of work for which I was born. So this is that they all believed that I was born for a certain kind of work. Why have I come to school? And accordingly, according to these perpetrators, so you can notice this word, keep in mind, perpetrators are people who cause a crime or who oppress or who torture other people. My attempts to get schooling were not justifiable. So they thought that why should I attempt even to get to school? Ram Singh and Sukham Singh, I'm reading now next. So now we'll be rotating among these three. Ram Singh and Sukham Singh were also in my class. Ram Singh was of the Chamar caste and Sukham Singh was a Jeevar. Both untouchables like me. Ram Singh's father and mother worked as agricultural laborers. Sukham Singh's father was a peon in the Inter College, a junior high school. The three of us studied together, grew up together, experienced the sweet and sore moments of childhood together. All three of us were very good in our studies, but our extremely lower caste background dogged us at every step. Nandini.
Yes, sir. Barla village also had some Muslim Tyagis who were called Tagas as well. The behavior of these Muslim Tagas was just like that of the Hindu Tagas. If we ever went out wearing neat and clean clothes, we had to hear their taunts that pierced deep inside like poisoned arrows. If we went to school in neat and clean clothes, our classmates said, "Abbe chude ke, abbe chude ka." He has come dressed in new clothes. If we went wearing old and shabby clothes, then they said, "Abbe chude ke, get away from me, you stink." This was our no-win situation. We were humiliated whichever way we dressed.
Right. So you see, now you see the clothes. So language insults clothes. If they wear good clothes, then they would say, well, how dare. And if you wear shabby clothes, then would say how dirty. So you see, there is no end of this kind of treatment or discrimination, because discriminator perpetrators would not stop at any level, and they would look at things from so many perspectives that there was never a win situation. There was always a losing situation, and defeat was written in a way that at the end, ultimately, do whatever you want, be educated, wear good clothes, take bath, go to school, but you will be socially defeated. And social defeat will be the result of whatever gains you make in other areas. Yes, Sugandha.
I reached 4th class. Kali Ram had replaced the headmaster, Bishambar Singh. Along with him had come another new teacher. After the arrival of these two, the three of us fell on terrible times. They would thrash us at the slightest excuse. Ram Singh would escape once in a while, but Sukhan Singh and I got beaten almost daily. I was very weak and skinny in those days.
Sukhan Singh developed a boil on his belly just below his ribs. While in class, he used to keep his shirt folded up to keep the boil uncovered. This way, the shirt could be kept clear of the pus. And he thought that if the teacher could see the boil, he would be decent, not hit him. One day, the teacher's fist hit the boil while he was thrashing, and Sukhan screamed with pain. The boil had burst. Seeing him flying with pain, I too began to cry. While we cried, the teacher was showering abuses on us non-stop. If I repeated his abusive words here, they would smear the nobility of Hindi. I say that because many big-name Hindi writers wrinkled their noses and eyebrows when I had a character swear in my short story, Bail Ki Khal, the ox hide. Coincidentally, the character who swore was a Brahmin, that is, the knower of Brahma, of God. Was it possible? Would a Brahmin swear? So in this paragraph, what we see is a comment about aesthetics, language, aesthetics, storytelling, and all that. But the reference is an episode from the real life of these children and how painful it is to suffer at the natural end, the boil, and at the social end, the teacher who hits the boil and it bursts, and then an environment of pain, cry, and then abuses. These are all real scenes. Actually, this happens. Even today, this happens. So this kind of, and then he goes ahead that I can't repeat those abuses here because the nobility of Hindi will be spoiled. And Hindi is a noble language. Once I used an abuse in a story, Bail Ki Khal, and the character who spoke was a Brahmin. So the Hindi people, critics and people sitting in Hindi departments and everywhere, controlling media, they all accused me of corrupting Hindi language. But in reality, they all use all these abuses. And they not only, it's not literature in real life, they abuse and they corrupt and they pollute and they torture and are perpetrators. So he's actually exposing that hypocrisy of the character. Yes, next, Nandini.
The ideal image of the teachers that I saw in my childhood has remained indelibly imprinted on my memory. Whenever someone starts talking about a great guru, I remember all those teachers who used to swear about mothers and sisters. They used to fondle good-looking boys and invite them to their homes and sexually abuse them.
One day, the headmaster Kaliram called me to his room and asked, Abe, what is your name? Om Prakash, I answered slowly and fearfully. Children used to feel scared just encountering the headmaster. The entire school was terrified of him. Chudeka? The headmaster threw his second question at me. G. All right. See that teak tree there? Go climb the tree, break the twigs and make a broom and sweep the whole school clean as a mirror. It is, after all, your family occupation. Go. Get to do it. Obeying the headmaster's orders, I cleaned all the rooms and the verandas. Just as I was about to finish, he came to me and said, after you have swept the rooms, go and sweep the playground. The playground was much larger than my small physique could handle, and in cleaning it, my back began to ache. My face was covered with dust. I had dust inside my mouth. The other children in my class were studying, and I was sweeping. The headmaster was sitting in his room and watching me. I was not even allowed to get a drink of water. I swept the whole day. I had never done so much work, being the pampered one among my brothers. The second day, and soon I reached school. The headmaster again put me to sweeping the school. I swept the whole day. I was consoling myself that I would go back to class the next day. Sugandha.
The third day, I went to the class and sat down quietly. After a few minutes, the headmaster's loud thundering was heard. Abe chure ke, motherfucker, where are you hiding your mother? I began to shake inconsolably. A Tyagi boy shouted, Master Sahib, there he is, sitting in the corner. The headmaster pounced on my neck. The pressure of his fingers was increasing. As a wolf grabs a lamb by the neck, he dragged me out of the class and threw me on the ground. He screamed, Go sweep the whole playground, otherwise I will shove chilies up your ass and throw you out of the school. Frightened, I was picked up the 3-day-old broom. Just like me, it was shedding its dried up leaves. All that remained were the thin sticks. Tears were falling from my eyes. I started to sweep the compound while my tears fell. From the doors and windows of the schoolroom, the teachers and the boys saw the spectacle. Each pore of my body was submerged in an abyss of anguish. Just then my father passed by the school. He stopped abruptly when he saw me sweeping the school compound. He called me, Munshiji, what are you doing? Munshiji was the pet name my father had given me. When I saw him, I burst out sobbing. He entered the school compound and came towards me. Seeing me crying, he asked, Munshiji, why are you crying? Tell me what has happened.
Yes,
I was
I was hiccuping by now. In between my hiccups, I told the whole story to my father, that the teacher had been making me sweep for the last 3 days, that they did not let me enter the classroom at all. Nandini.
Pitaji snatched the broom from my hand and threw it away. His eyes were blazing. Pitaji, who was always taunt as a boasting in front of others, was so angry that his dense mustache was fluttering. He began to scream, Who is that teacher, that progeny of Dronacharya, who forces my son to sweep?
Yeah, this is a famous line from this page or the chapter 1. Who is that teacher, that progeny of Dronacharya? So this reference is to Ekalavya, Dronacharya, Mahabharat, where the thumb was, taken off. Okay, who forces, so in the Dalit memory, or in the low caste people memory, the character of Ekalavya and Dronacharya is always there. So whenever you see these incidences happen in schools, colleges, etc., this story from the Mahabharata becomes a reference to understand this whole relationship of the caste system or the Varan Vyavastha. Yes, please continue.
Pitaji's voice had echoed through the whole school. All the teachers, along with the headmaster, came out. Kaliram, the headmaster, threatened my father and called him names. But his threats had no effect on Pitaji. I had never forgotten the courage and
I had never forgotten the courage
and the and the fortitude with which my father confronted the headmaster that day.
yes,
Pitaji had
yeah, this
all
is a very,
sorts
very
of
important episode. And uh, you see, certain stories in your life uh, have a cementing effect. Certain stories have the effect of distortion, torture, oppression. So the school created that experience by asking him to clean because he came from the sweeper's caste. Whereas the father who had sent him to school was clear enough that he did not send him to school for sweeping. And then the ancient imagery of the Mahabharata, and then his fortitude with which my father confronted the headmaster that day. So this really built his consciousness. I mean, the Dalit child's consciousness out of resistance. So resistance is so crucial for these people. If they do not resist, then everything will sweep them, because that is what the caste is. The lower caste people have to resist it. If they do not resist, then their fortune, their fate, their luck, everything is written. Yes, continue, please.
the headmaster. Pitaji had all sorts of weaknesses, but the decisive turn that he gave my future that day had a great influence on my personality. The headmaster had roared, take him away from here. The Chura wants him educated. Go, otherwise I will have your bones broken. Pitaji took my hand and started walking toward our home. As he walked away, he said, loud enough for the headmaster to hear, you are a teacher, so I am leaving now. But remember this much, Master, this Chure Ka will study right here in this school, and not just him, there will be more coming after him.
Yes, so this, this delivery of a great thought. So this also shows that India by then had adopted uh, Ambedkar's constitution. India adopted democracy. Awareness was reaching to people through several channels, and there was an assertion. So he could assert to the teachers, remember this, master, this Chureka will study here, right here in this school, and not just him, there will be more coming after him. Now, you see, this statement is really a rebellious statement, and that reflects a lot about what is there in the future. Yes, Sugandha.
Pitaji had faith that the Tyagis of the village would chastise Master Kaliram for his behavior. But what happened was the exact opposite. On whatever doors we knocked, the answer was, what is the point of sending him to school? Or when has a crow become a swan? Or you illiterate boorish people, what do you know? Knowledge is not gained like this. Hey, if he asked a Chura's progeny to sweep, what is the big deal in that? Or he only got him to sweep, did not ask for his thumb, the Guru Dakshina like Dronacharya, and so forth. Pitaji came back tired and dejected. He sat up all night without food or drink. God knows how deep an anguish Pitaji went through. As soon as the morning broke, he took me along and went to the house of the Pradhan or village chief, Swaga Singh Tyagi. As soon as the Pradhan saw Pitaji, he said, Abid Chotan, what is the matter? You have come so early in the morning. Chaudhary
Chaudhry
Sahab,
Saab, Chaudhry
you,
Saab, you say that the government has opened the doors of the schools for the children of Churas and Chamars, and that headmaster makes this child of mine to come out of the class and sweep all day instead of teaching him. If he has to sweep the school all day, then you tell me, what is he going to study? Pitaji was applicating, Pitaji was supplicating the Pradhan. He had tears in his eyes. I was standing near him and looking at him. The Pradhan called me near him and asked, which class are you in? Ji, the fourth. You are in my Mahindra's class? Ji. Pradhanji said to Pitaji, don't worry, send him to school tomorrow. Nandini.
The next day, I went to school with fear stalking my heart. I sat in the class in trepidation. Every second, I worried that the headmaster was coming. Now he comes. At the slightest sound, my heart pounded. After a few days, things calmed down, but my heart trembled the moment I saw Headmaster Kaliram. It seemed as though it wasn't a teacher who was coming toward me, but a snorting white boar with his snout up in the air.